What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheetsaber. We are going to be going through our first look of the NBA slate, which, as we all know, is going to be not nullified, but a lot less relevant, maybe by 6 Eastern, maybe by or 7 Eastern when the game starts, 6 Eastern when we come back on live. But what's interesting is that I do think there's a lot we get out of these shows, and there's a lot of early plays that I'm starting to force myself to stick with, which have been the ones that have paid off. And, the first thing I said, and not that Cam Thomas had a monster game, but he was better than all the other guys from Brooklyn. You know what I mean? Chris Duarte, who, when they moved to the bench, I sort of got scared in my big one and took him out, but he was in 30% of my lineups and ended up 8% owned, and he put up a big game. A lot of the initial thoughts we have, just because we get the late value, and I panicked yesterday. I made the mistake in my big one and played Wanamaker because I could fit in exactly what I wanted elsewhere, and it didn't work out. But I wish there was a moment early on where I'm going, oh my God, I'm looking at my $15 lineup, which used to be my $500 lineup, and it had everybody going. But just a reminder that we can actually, get something out of these shows. This is a good way to start off with, and then not to lose sight of these guys later on. It's a really key thing. Sheets, go ahead. I tell you something.
So I would like to whine. You can't whine. Okay. I would like to issue my bitch of the night. So my bitch of the night is Derrick Rose. And the reason why my bitch of the night is Derrick Rose is because I had lineups with not only Duarte, but not only like Levert, but I had I had Sadiq Bey. I had Sadiq Bey
everywhere. He was in 100% of my big buy-in.
Yeah. I had all kinds of stuff just piled on, and Derrick Rose just got me. I mean, I even cashed in the big one on DraftKings with Derrick Rose in my lineup. It was that was, and that's the NBA. You know what I mean? But it was particularly annoying because you know what? I didn't mind having it in my lineups, even though he was chalky, because everywhere else in the lineup was,
Yeah, you were Duarte. Yeah, I mean, you already were getting different with that. But that's the thing that's interesting is I found that every build that made sense with him, I kept putting him in as my chalky play, and this is an interesting thing that happened. Now, strategically, that's still the right thing to do. We didn't do anything wrong. He got hurt. It just happened. The same way that I 100 million % maintained my 50% Parham exposure last night in spite of the awful injury. That was brutal. And the good news is he's stable. But I did my bets yesterday, and I was 8-5 on my bet, but I would have been 10. I mean, Parham, I had to get over 1 catch, and I had to get him over 7.5 yards. And I also had a long shot touchdown one with him. So he was the reason why it really wasn't as good of a day for the betting side of it. But I did well on Prize Picks, and I did really well on the NFL, even with Parham in some of my lineups, which was kind of shocking, actually. I had him captain, by the way, in a couple lineups when he was 0.2% owned, and I'm watching that first play, and I think I see a touchdown, and I'm like, he's going to get another one, and before you know it, anyway, that was a rough one.
You know what else, by the way, was a little tilty about the Derrick Rose. You know who's he got injured. You know who got there was by that freaking Miles McBride dude.
McBride. Yeah, you know what? And so what I can say we suck, but then I can say every other site sucks because I listened to other shows yesterday and everybody was saying, God, if you're playing Miles McBride and trying to get different with Fournier, then you're out of your mind. And those guys, of course, end up being the better plays in their game. But I will say one other thing. My other original thing that I came away from because of the value that really bothers me, and this is maybe a problem on my part, I was so adamant on quickly having this huge upside. I know Derrick Rose got hurt. I know things happen, whatever. But quickly putting up one of the biggest scores of the night certainly hurt because I at one point had the Cam Thomas quickly and Duarte combination, and that would have just been at I know Thomas didn't end up having a monster game, but those three combined would have just made you so different, and you would have had a great chance to win everything.
I would also like to say something else. I mean, I want to talk for a minute about something important. I asked you yesterday about this. What is that picture in the background?
It's Audrey Hepburn.
And who did you? Somebody you knew made that?
A friend, yeah. I got a lot of artistic friends.
That's awesome.
It's really good.
Piece back there. I mean, that's like crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty
like
awesome. We've got a few other things. Oh, awesome. Well, I'll be happy to tell them, and I'm sure they'll really appreciate it. But they sell some art. We're in the arts district of LA, so you're going to get some of this stuff down here. And a lot of our good friends, some of them, they made it for free. So nice of them. Excellent. Yeah. Anyway, well, let's get into this slate because we've got a lot of, it's a big slate, but it can be made very small, very easily. And there's a lot of what to do. Milwaukee's going to be the biggest situation, I think, that we're going to want to look out for that. But I think that, we're going to hear.
Yeah,
about
but
this
it's
stuff
not.
throughout
But
the day.
Milwaukee, it's not like you have. It's not like you have like Demarcus Cousins going back to New Orleans or anything, right? It's not like you have anything like that going on, right? We'll get there, I guess.
I mean, yeah, if you're playing, 100 lineups and you're not having Demarcus Cousins in like 20% of them, I don't know what you're doing. Is my initial thought, but you know what? We'll get to that, like you said. There's a bunch of misprojections I see on the Milwaukee side, and I don't know if they'll correct, but like we'll get to that game because that is going to be where a lot of this is made. My initial thought was to try and force a stack in that game because New Orleans plays fast, Milwaukee also plays fast, and you have guys who are too expensive seemingly on New Orleans. But then you could fill it in with a Graham and a Valanciunas, or a Graham and a Ingram if you want to. And I think that you'd be in a good spot to potentially take something down if that game stays close and high and tight as it's projected. So with that as sort of the overall outlook, let's pull your screen up and let's go game by game here. Let's see what we can find.
Yeah, I mean, do we need to? I mean, we'll talk about it, but do we need to mess to this first game?
I don't. Okay, so let's talk about it because it's in a spot where we wanted to attack everything. So if Hero is out again, and if Omer Jurcevic, your set 7 is out, I do think Dwayne Dedmon is in play. I think at 5K, you're looking at a guy who's going to get you roughly 6x here enough for the time, maybe a little higher. He's probably going to be owned a little bit as of right now, but maybe that goes away by the end of the day. He put up 40 in the last game. We can't say this guy doesn't have a ceiling. He did it against Joel Embiid. He put up 44 2 games before that. Yeah, there was a 20 in there and there was a 12 in there in between. But if we're talking about guys who can smash, especially if on the other side you don't have a Mo Bamba, it's not like you're looking at him to score, but it should open up some more rebounds even for Dedmon. And a guy one less guy who's like screening him away from the guy who's driving to the basket, so maybe he gets an extra block or two because of it. That's all, just something I'm considering. And I will go back to the point when no one's going to play Duncan Robinson, we should consider him. Like, I mean, he went nuts the other night, and I talked about it more than I played it. I think I had like 15% of them, but he put up 39 fantasy points, and that's obviously awesome for his price. But the main thing would be Lowry and Dedmon for me, depending on what happens with Hero. If Hero's out, I'm going to go back to Lowry. I don't care if Lowry had a down game. The usage overall has been great. I watched some of that game. Gabe Vincent and Duncan Robinson in ISO step back 3-pointers were like 7 for 8 or something, and it was all like in the first half piling on a huge lead. So there was no real room for Lowry to have the same usage that he usually does. Was in the low 20s, and I know we've seen that a little bit from him lately, but he's had the 30+ usage games. You want to hope for something like that. I don't know if they'll necessarily need all of it, but I do like those guys a little bit. And then it just depends on who's playing for Orlando. Obviously, if Cole Anthony, we already have what's his name? We already have Terrence Ross out. We possibly have Bamba. We might lose Cole Anthony and Gary Harris, in which case we're going to need to play Chuma Okeke. We're going to need to play some of these guys, because if you're going to tighten that rotation up to like 8 or 9 guys, there's just going to be too many minutes to go around, and somebody's going to have to produce. So my initial thoughts is bet the under on this game, bet Miami to cover, and I think those are really good bets. We'll have to revisit it when we find out who's playing, because there's so many questionables that are relevant on the Orlando side, and Hero and Yurt 7 are really relevant on the Miami side. So, I mean, we may end up playing, Okeke. We may end up with a Robin Lopez lineup if things go a certain way tonight. You know what I mean? It's hard to know. And also, I'm happy it's the first game, because if there's one game that I'm a little worried of getting canceled because you got the protocols from 3 players this morning, I think that you might be a little bit nervous about this game playing, and it is time we start considering that stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
We can move on.
Yeah, I do think that of the players in this game, I do like Lowry and Dedmon the best. I don't know if they're going to make it into my big lineups though. But I definitely, if you say, hey, who's your best plays in this game, I would agree with you. I would say Lowry and Dedmon, regardless of whether Hero plays. And if Hero doesn't play, then, like I said, I think Lowry gets a bump, but I think his ownership would exceed the bump he would get, honestly.
It's possible, but there is other options. Yeah, go ahead.
I prefer for in a GPP for Lowry to Hero to be in for me to play Lowry.
Right. I'm really wondering what Orlando would possibly do if Cole Anthony is out, because they don't have another guy who could even play point guard, like Michael Mulder, maybe. I mean, it's really weird. So you're going to get like 35 minutes out of somebody you might not have heard of before. unless they call some people up today that I've missed. But we'll revisit that one at 6 because it's too much injury stuff. All right, Golden State, Boston. What do you got for me? This, I believe, is a nationally televised game. It would have to be. Just, I'll take a quick look, but go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So Tatum. Tatum's a good play. Curry's a good play. I don't see too much with the value. Pools and COVID, right?
Yep.
So I guess you could play Damian Lee if you want. So those are my guys there. It'd be like Curry, Damian Lee, maybe, and then on, like I said, on the other side, maybe Tatum. I don't know. Be a good game to watch, I suppose.
Yeah, it should be a good game. I don't even know for sure. I mean, I feel like Boston looks like a different team every time I watch them, so I don't really know who they are. I think that the Curry thing is getting a little thin, but it's always like a great fit. Look, he's just basically the production is almost never matching, and for some reason my computer shows now to froze my projections. But it's partly, it's not like he's playing poorly. I mean, partly he's not shooting the ball well this month. But I think he and Draymond in a competitive game are both interesting. I would actually put Draymond as maybe 5,500. It's just, there's just so many ways he can get there. And I just love playing guys like that. It's not always going to be the perfect thing. And maybe he's not the main guy on their offense, but he does sort of run their offense. So I think in a tight game is where I look for Draymond. This game is supposed to be tight. So I think Draymond is viable. I think that Steph is viable. I think Wiggins is even viable. I just don't think you need to do it on any of these guys. And Tatum at 9K is too low of a price, even with Jalen Brown back. We were having him at 10-4 before. It was a little bit of a different story because then you put him into a different tier, but that was without Tatum. With Brown back, I think if you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think you play Brown in some lineups. The minutes are going to be back, I think, for him. But I think he's the ultimate GPP play, and I think Tatum is a legitimate, really solid play on this slate. But there's just, I mean, Tatum versus a Westbrookless Davis, believe it or not, that actually boosts Davis a ton because of the rebound. So you're going to have those kind of conversations, and that's where we're gonna have to try and figure out how to differentiate.
Well, the other thing I would say is that you had mentioned to me about Curry on the last couple of weeks is that, I don't want to say not changed his game, right, but he's just upped his whole freaking all his stuff to like these new levels. Like his defense is like elite. His defense is always elite, but like people didn't realize it. But like this year, people are realizing it. And he's been such a freaking team player. It's just disgusting, Like he's he'll sit on the bench and watch the second unit do whatever, and like actually moment to his coach, I don't need to go in yet. You know what I mean? Like he'll like, and which is incredible for their chance to win the championship, and not so great for his ability to be played at 11-2. You know what I mean? Like on games.
Right. Exactly right.
So yeah.
Is he the best teammate since Magic Johnson? Seriously, he makes the court wide open for everybody else. He completely plays a total unselfish game. They literally had to talk him into taking more threes. I mean, I don't know. What a great teammate he is. But yeah, certainly a good game. Maybe not quite as exciting for DFS, but all of these guys we mentioned are viable. And if you wanted to get a little talk
more about Damian Lee, by the way. I did bring him up with pull outs.
I didn't have an interest. I do like Lee when we have no. I just think that it's so it's interesting. So I think the minutes are totally in flux. I think if he gets hot shooting, that could work. But I think if he can't defend, so he's going to have to defend the guy like Marcus Smart, or one of he or Steph is going to, and Marcus Smart will just post up all day long. I don't see how that's going to work too well. So I could see Gary Payton getting more minutes, and maybe the Lee 28-minute projection could end up in the 24 range. Now, certainly if they're down, it'll probably end up closer to the 30 range. But it's just, they have bodies. You have Otto Porter there, who's, combo player. You have Iguodala, who's supposed to play tonight. You get Kuminga back. There's just a lot of bodies. So I don't know if I can get to Damian Lee, but I think he is a viable tournament option at the moment. But I think by the time we get the real value straightened out, now if Damian Lee is some reason starting or something like that tonight, then maybe we could have a conversation about it.
Okay.
Although he's probably technically a better play, if not because he gets to run a little more of the offense without Steph, without Steph and Dre. All right, Denver, Atlanta. This should be another good real life game. And here's what I'm going to say to everybody. Look, I cannot make a good argument. I just wanted to start this one off because I wanted to say about Jokic. I think that he's like honestly become the most underrated player in basketball. And I'm really sorry for him that his team has lost like everything that they built around, because you watch this guy and all he does is like, he doesn't ever fail to produce. Basically, it takes a miracle of a game. You'll get him 1 out of 10 where he's not going to be the safest play. If you're playing a cash game, I think you would want to play Jokic. I will say though, of guys who we could have trouble with, Capella is one of those kind of guys. And yes, no one can really guard him. But if you wanted to say a guy who's really limited production and throughout his career as a center, and a team that plays with multiple bigs that are active and long, like Collins and Capella, I could see this being a struggle spot a little bit for Jokic, to where he struggles to 60 probably. You know what I mean? He's going to, in tight games, if this game is tight, possibly get there. I also worry that Atlanta might be better than, Denver just has looked shaky at best. So I really think that the Jokic is really the only thing that we really need to desperately talk about. I think that Campazzo fits in as an interesting tournament play. Probably going to get a little more ownership because with the other guys out. But I don't know what's going to happen with Bones Highland. He got late scratched the last time. As of right now, I think it'd just be Jokic for me. And then on the Atlanta side, obviously every day you can play Trae Young. This is no different of a day. I don't find him as the guy I need to get, but then again, you rarely do. And he's capable of putting up capable of putting up 70, and he's probably going to put up 50. But I don't think that's what I want to do. I do think Cam Reddish is your long shot tournament play, and both Collins and Capella are in play, but I don't feel like outside of, Collins might be my favorite in this game, but I want him as a guy who's going to go out there and get me like a sure 35 to 45 kind of a thing. And that's where I see him in this kind of a game. So I'm not looking for any of these guys to break a slate for me. That's where I'm at.
In this new world of raw points, you know what I mean? Which I would consider this, that's what this season has been about, really, with most of the studs not really, really producing, and you kind of needing those raw points. I mean, that 60 point just lock from Jokic is like really useful, like on every slate, and as COVID and all this other stuff just creates new value like every freaking day. It's interesting. You were playing back. I wasn't playing yet when what was it then? Was it Westbrook, right? Like every day would produce, and it didn't matter what his price was. You know what I mean? I guess it must feel the same. I wasn't, I wasn't there when that happened, but like people, I guess for a while would say, well, I'm not playing him at 11K. I'm not playing 11.5. I'm not playing at 12K. I'm playing at 12.5.
I think he got to be like 15,000 at one point.
Did he really get to 15?
I don't know if he quite made it to 15, but I think he was in the 14, at least on a shorter slate. And it was like, still, okay, well, you're getting 70 to 85, sometimes 95. You know what I mean? Like he was putting up, 40-point triple doubles. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, if you tell me this is a match you came up trouble with, okay, fine, whatever. I'd love to not play him, but it's going to be tough not to. I didn't get to any of the other Denvers. I like it, whatever. There's a lot of value here, but Cam Reddish on the Atlanta side would be my preferred cheapo there. And I heard a take, which it's totally on the margin. Okay. But just to impact Capella and Collins a little bit, that other center is back, the Okongwu.
Yep.
And just from the talk, I think they want to play him. Maybe he's not gonna. They say he's got a minutes restriction, which means he's probably gonna play. You know what I mean? Like
him with a minutes restriction means he might play more minutes than we thought he would.
My point is, so if he plays 12 minutes even, you know what I mean? That's gonna do something to either Collins or Capella or both. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'd play either of them anyway, but just on the margin, I figured I'd just at least mention it.
I think that's a fair point to bring up for sure. I'm not terribly. Go ahead.
No,
I feel Collins
is
okay. Go ahead. Sorry, Sheets.
I'm good.
Okay, sorry. All right, let's move on to the game that I think is the most important game of the night. I guess you could argue for a couple more, but this is probably where you want to be focused. Chris Middleton is a very difficult fade. I will probably, as of right now, be over the field on him. I will probably be over the field on Drew Holiday, but I think if it gets to be Holliday at 65, 70%, which is definitely in the realm, I think we can start to look for a potential fade here. Drew Holiday has a lot of Russell Westbrook in him offensively when he needs to be the guy. He doesn't have that, but he can go like 5 for 20 kind of a game. And he was 12 for 18, incredibly efficient with 14 assists in the last game against Indiana in a good matchup. I don't know, and he had 32% usage. I don't know with Middleton coming back that Middleton is not the better play at 1,200 less forward eligibility because, other guys like Kyle Lowry are there, and maybe you could play Holiday and Lowry together, but that automatically lost with 2 of your point guard spots on DraftKings. So this is a tough one. That's the first tough one. Then you've got the Cousins thing. Cousins is going to be I'm playing 3 big lineups today. I think I would be really surprised if Cousins doesn't end up in one of them. Forget the narrative. Sure, there is the narrative too. But the fact that he's able to play minutes more than, even if he plays 18 minutes, while it's not a good matchup against Joe Valek, it's Demarcus Cousins. He's going to have ridiculous usage for those 18 minutes. And with no Portis on the court, you're going to want some of this. The guy who I find the most interesting, I think is just I don't know if they're just like, what the hell is going on with the projections? Because Jordan Nwora should be the guy that we're looking at here. They love him. He's very versatile. He can play the big. He can play the small. He played 27 minutes in the last game, put up 32 fantasy points, and that was with Portis. Why are we assuming Jordan Nwora is going to play 18 minutes? Is that what you've got for him, around 20 minutes?
I wasn't ready to come up with that.
Sorry, my fault. Because I think this is the most interesting part, and I think that you've got George Hill back in the mix now, so maybe you could argue against Grayson Allen. I will go right back to Grayson Allen. As bad as he was the other night, he's not going to shoot 0 for a million.
Yeah, I only have Nora with 15 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening to make this happen. So maybe that's a possibility, but this kid is good and he can play. And this is what won everybody the tournaments the other day. They played Nwora on speculation. That was with Portis in. And again, Grayson Allen is not going to go 2 for 16 or 2 for 13 again. So in order of rankings, I have Middleton number 1. Holiday is legitimately number 2, but I don't know that I think the ownership gets too high. You can definitely find a fade here. Number 3 for me is Cousins / Nwora. And then number 4 is Mamu. I'm just going to call him Mamu because I can't try and pronounce the last name. I'm usually pretty good with last names, but some of the Serbian ones and all that stuff are really tricky for me. I would take a shot at him at minimum cost. I do think that without Portis in there, you have a huge opportunity for at least one of these guys, maybe 2, to have big games. So in cash games, you might end up playing 3 or 4 of these, or maybe not in cash games, but in tournaments, I think you could play 3 or 4 on Milwaukee and on New Orleans. I think that everybody is fine, which means I want to just sort of maybe not reach, but I'll play Josh Hart at 5,500 in some lineups. I'll play Devontae Graham for sure at 5,200 in some lineups. I'll play Joe Val at 8,200. And then no one wants to play Brandon Ingram, but his price is back down to 87. And if you just look at Brandon, what he's been doing, and again, this matchup is a lot better. This team isn't the same defensively without Giannis. They're still good, but Giannis is a big part of what makes their defense go. And you have Brandon Ingram, who scored 50 or more in 4 out of the last 6. So all of these guys I'm looking for as run backs because I really want to stack up the Milwaukee side.
Okay. So here are my thoughts. Here are my thoughts on this. First of all, I will point out that in addition to Cousins going back to New Orleans, you have Drew Holiday going back to New Orleans. He was there forever.
Yep.
Here's my thought. First of all, I'll attack the one guy I mentioned first. So Sam Mishkashvili, whatever. I have him as projecting okay. Like you said, like all these guys, like even Grayson Allen still is going to project okay. If maybe Nwora might get some more love a little bit later as people realize what you've been realizing, whatever it is. But the way I'm looking at it right now is a couple of things. Is if Demarcus Cousins is starting, I don't see him missing from any of my lineups. If you want to know the truth, he's 3,100. He has like a 400% usage rate. I mean, it's just bananas. I mean,
I
he's
don't
gonna
think they would start him.
Okay, because when I was reading the even the whatchamacallit,
Maybe they
even the
would. Maybe they
DraftKings.
would actually. Sorry, go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. Like I'm reading the DraftKings things, and it even said he's a good chance he could look as a multi-game run as the Bucks starting center. You know, and he's projecting for me at 8x. And I it's looking to me like he'd be. They're going to announce him starting. And he's going to be 70% owned. That's like at least the way I looked at it when I first looked at the slate.
If he's starting,
right?
If he's starting, so
right. If he's not starting, I don't have to play him, honestly.
Well, we're probably going to have to speculate on this later. So let's do a little bit of it now because logically, it would make sense to put your biggest body up against Joe Val, even though it's not like the Cousins defensively can really guard Joe Val. But it also probably means more likely quick foul trouble. It makes me like maybe Cousins in addition to one of the. If Cousins starts, I would like to play him with Mamu or Nuora possibly, because I think that there's a chance they can both get there with Cousins playing limited minutes as a starter. It's not like they're going to try and match him for minute without Joe, but I don't think Cousins is going to play more than 20 minutes. Maybe he'll play 22, but that's plenty for me. I think off the bench is where you're going to get lower ownership on him. And I think it's a better situation for him because you don't worry as much about the foul trouble against Joe Val. It changes the rotation. He doesn't have to play with one of Middleton or Holliday probably, which gives him even more usage. So I kind of like the idea of playing him if he's not starting as a tournament play more than I do if he's starting. If he's starting, then it's like, okay, let's try and find the ways we can try and fade this because we've seen this story before. And it's not like we're worried about fading it if he scores 25. We're worried about fading if he scores like 50. And that's in 20 minutes. I've seen this guy do this before. He has that ability. It's not a good matchup for him. I really want to emphasize that, but he's a guy who, you know, fantasy production wise is as good as anybody in the sport. What do you think about the New Orleans side?
Yeah. So I was getting to my second, which is kind of related to that. Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think Josh Hart is rating to be a very, very play across the board. I mean, not like a must play, but he's like showing up in my initial op when I ran for the site. Mm-hmm. Just because his price kind of like fits in with other stuff you want to do. Nicole Alexander-Walker at 4,200 looks to be a decent value as well. But here's the thing, you know, for the same, if Demarcus Cousins is starting, for example, like he's like that has the best, you know, usage of what everybody in the NBA. He might be like the worst defensive player in the league, like by a lot. And I think Joe Val can get like 50 in the first half. You know what I mean? Like as many minutes as they have Cousins guarding him, like he's gonna have like 2.5 to 3 fantasy points per minute. You know what I mean? So I think I think you could play both of them together, and I think that's probably a good thing to do. I mean, like the more minutes Cousins plays, the more fantasy points Joe Val's gonna get, I think. And you have issues if you do that because then you can't play Jokic, whatever. But I think that Joe Val, I mean, if whoever he gets, he's gonna kill people in this game.
So Joe Val's 4K less than Jokic and gives you a different build. Don't you think that makes okay? So let's say Jokic puts up 70. Don't you think that and that's, by the way, it's a lot for him in a tough matchup.
Yeah.
Don't you think that 50 for Joe Val is basically, it's a little less likely maybe than 70 for Jokic, but I think him to be within 20 points of Jokic, which would equal 5x more per point per dollar, that's a really good play, and you get the correlation with the Milwaukee guys you're playing.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, so I think we're on the same page here. This is, and by the way, don't count out Brandon Ingram here. The one thing that worries me about Joe Val in this is that I've watched this story before with Milwaukee, even without Giannis. They do a good job of protecting the paint. That's their thing. Okay, they're going to let you take some threes. They're going to let you do that. And I know they don't have the individual matchups, but they will be double teaming, rotating, and using their length and their speed defensively to try and make up for it with guys like Connaughton, who are great athletes like Connaughton, Middleton, Holliday. They're really good at doing this part of the game. So, and by the way, if Drew Holiday ends up guarding Brandon Ingram, then I'm sorry, and we don't want to really play much of either of them. That would be my take. And I think that's very possible. As much, even with the 8-inch height difference or 7-inch, it doesn't matter with Holliday. He can guard anybody one-on-one as well as anybody in the NBA. All right, that's the game I think we want to target. So the more you can skip the guys in the first games, the better off you are, because we're going to need starting lineups. We're going to need to see who's playing in some of these other spots. We're going to need to see who's playing for the Lakers, by the way. That doesn't start till 10. All right, you ready to talk San Antonio and Utah?
Yeah, I'm going to pass the San Antonio side. On the Utah side, I like. I always like Gobert and Mitchell. I don't know how or where I'm going to get them in today, but they're going to be low owned, I guess. And they're going to project well. So what's that?
I hate what they did with their prices. They lowered them back down to now we kind of like really want to play them, you know?
Yeah.
I wish they didn't do that, because I would, yeah, but it'd be so nice if they didn't, because we know what their story is. You know, they have 48 at the end of 3 quarters and they don't play the 4th quarter, you know, which is great.
Right.
And we like the points, but it's just, anyway, sorry, she didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so I like those 2 guys. You know, you could make the case for freaking Clarkson's what, 4,500? Is that right?
Yep.
I mean,
yep.
Geez, that's pretty tempting, dude. I have to tell you. I'm going to include him in my player pool. That's for sure.
Yep.
Wow. I just know he can get 40. It's like, I just know it's possible. And if he doesn't start or whatever, I don't know where he comes from nowadays, but like if he could be in blowout run, if they blow him out too, I mean, this could be 4,500 is just way too cheap for him. That's the best I'll describe.
Okay, so I have one of my favorite tournament plays, and again, I'm going to emphasize that this is for large field tournaments. But if you're not playing some Hassan Whiteside tonight, especially because people are going to eat up, play Boogie and Whiteside in the same lineup in some tournaments.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like, no, because think about it. Let me just Whiteside, we were right. I nailed him the one game he really went off a couple games ago, but they're blowing everybody out. I don't know why we should assume this would be any different with San Antonio coming in. Whiteside's put up in his last 3 games, he's averaging 33 fantasy points a game and he's 3,500. Okay.
Yeah,
and that's because they're blowing everybody out. And there's not only that, they have nobody to match up with him. You might see him, like, it'll be one of those things. You see 4 minutes of Whiteside and he's got 13 fantasy points in 4 minutes, first 4 minutes. That's the kind of thing I'm expecting from he and Cousins tonight. So I really like Whiteside for long shot tournament play. Is my first look at this game. I really like Clarkson. But I feel like we don't need to do that Clarkson thing. For a guy so shooting reliant, whose minutes are going to be in flux, and even in a blowout, they don't always give him all of the run. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't need to play. He doesn't need to close in games they're up by, let's say this game ends up like 25 or so. They could actually pull him off the court. And I do think this is going to be a really hard game for San Antonio to keep up in. I trust Popovich. He'll have a good game, a good scheme or whatever, what to do. But I don't know. And if for any reason, I do like Mitchell, by the way. I like Mitchell and I like Gobert, but I think that I'd rather play than Gobert. I'd rather play Joval, partly the correlation and partly because, like you said, the matchup itself, even if I respect Milwaukee's way of guarding the interior, it's just really hard for me to see Joval not having a nice game here. Whereas there's plenty of ways Gobert could be, I don't want to say played off the court, but they could go small and do the stretch out thing. And also you've got Whiteside, who I think is going to go off already, even in his limited time. I actually think Whiteside might end up being like a priority for me by the end of the day. I mean, I love this idea, and I think it's very possible. I do want to say, if you want to do a lineup, and I think you can do it, I think it's worth it to play a DeJounte Murray with Whiteside, with Mitchell and Gobert in one of the large field tournaments. And I'll definitely do it in one of the $15 or whatever. Do I want to get any higher than that? I'm not sure. But there is a path. We saw it happen last year with DeJounte, and I say it all the time against Utah. You're going to get ceiling games, and especially on FanDuel where Murray's 9K, you're going to get ceiling games out of star players against a team that's job is to basically shut everybody down, because your star is going to have to take over. And if this is that kind of game for Murray, that's great. It does take away a little bit of his steal block upside because Utah's pretty clean. But I do think this pace of this game should be really good. And honestly, if Lonnie Walker's out, maybe we could take a shot with Vassell, but I don't think I need to go that far in this slate. I do think this game could be interesting, but I like the blowout angle. And I don't know if I want to play them together, but I think Clarkson and Whiteside are both really interesting. And then if you're playing it close, you could get an easy game stack in with Murray on one side and Gobert. You could even throw Royce O'Neal into that mix. He's a solid play. Royce O'Neal is he's a really good basketball player, and he'll just have games where he accidentally gets 30. I don't think we need to do that tonight, but he does have ceiling. anyway, it's not the best game on the slate, but I think that I do like the long shot Whiteside thing. All right, Memphis to Sacramento.
The next game, Memphis Sacramento. Just to kind of tout a little bit. For those of you who are watching this for free, I mean, if you are a premium member of TrueDFS, you have access to my sheets where I do kind of like industry projections and I kind of back test them for accuracy and I overweight some sites over whatever and come up with what I think is kind of like the best overall summary of the way industry is looking at these players. And that's what I'm kind of looking at off to the side when I talk about, how I have these guys ranked. But in any case, of my top 10 point per dollar plays as of, it's like 1:15 in the afternoon, I have 5 of them coming from Sacramento. Okay. So I'll go through who those are, and then you'll see is that some of them kind of like bump into one another. Like at the top of the list is Davion Mitchell. Like I have him projected like 8.5x as an aggregate, and also have him projected. I also have him projected as average ownership of about 50%, which is certainly makes sense. With Fox out, etc. It certainly makes a lot of sense. And then the next 2 guys I have, and we'll get to the other guys in a minute, are both actually the centers. Like Tristan Thompson and Damian Jones. I have one's at 38 and one's at 3K. I have them both projected over 6x. And the thing is, they both can't get there, right? Not they both can't, but you'd have to imagine. I have Tristan Thompson projected for 25 minutes, and I have Damian Jones projected for like 20 minutes. So they're going to be splitting it up in some way. So you don't want to play those 2 together. And then I have like Mitu, who takes some of the same types of usage away from those first 2 guys. And I have him projected at like 6x also. But then, I mean, presuming he plays, you have like the real upside high scoring value guy. That would be Tyrese Halliburton. He's 5,800 and, he's a very, very strong play as well. And he has that raw points upside also. So presuming that his ankles are right, presuming that he plays, he's a really strong play too. So all of those guys. And then like, if you drop down a little bit, you might actually get to maybe the best play of them all. And that would be Buddy Hield, So there's a lot of Sacramento guys to kind of shift around and figure out. You have to figure out who you want only if they're starting. You have to figure out whatever. And you just can't deny some of the value on this. So that's on the Sacramento side. On the Memphis side, I just kind of have not a lot. I have like Tyus Jones as an okay play, and then I have Steven Adams. But I know that this is good theory, and Bobby does this really, really effectively. If you do like a bunch of value guys from one side, you could play somebody from the other side, even if the value is not the greatest, just to get some correlation. So maybe I'd force in something like a Jaren Jackson, who had a really bad game his last game, maybe a Dylan Brooks or something like that. Because if you do play like a bunch of value guys from one side, you hack it to make that worthwhile. Sorry to take over that whole game there, but that's
great stuff.
Yeah.
That's great stuff. No problem at all. That's how I've got it written now. Let me just start with the Memphis side.
Okay.
Because I do want some run backs in this game. I think Steven Adams is viable, by the way. I know there's a lot of centers we talked about, but I think he's a reach viable. Like he's a viable if you're maybe stacking up this game. You know what I mean? And then maybe you don't do the Cousins. Maybe Cousins isn't starting. You don't do the Cousins thing, and you don't do the Whiteside, but you play Adams and you play Thompson or Jones on the other side. I would give Thompson a little bit the edge, but I think that Jones could easily be Jones by the end of the day. They also could go smaller a little bit, but Memphis, Sacramento still seems to be intent on playing their big guys no matter what. But I would say that I think that all of Brooks, Bane, and Triple J are strong plays. Triple J being the strongest play of all of them. And I think that he would be the one I would try to prioritize on a run back. There's always going to be volatility with his game because of the foul trouble he gets into, because of the number of bodies they have that can play well and end up on the court an extra 2 or 3 minutes per half. But I don't think we should be expecting 24 minutes out of him. Again, I don't feel like we should be expecting less than 30. And I think that he's a really strong play on both sides. I think that, but I think so. He'd be my preferred one, but Bane or Brooks, maybe not in addition to, possibly in addition to. It's a high paced game. Those would be my next guys. And then Tyus Jones would be my last. But I would go Jackson, then probably with Brooks more than with Bane, but one of Jackson or Bane with something with Brooks or something. I don't know, something like that. probably Bane and Jackson are my two favorites, followed by Adams and Tyus Jones. And I think they're all extremely viable. And don't look, it's not the right night to play DeAnthony Melton off the bench, but this could be like a DeAnthony Melton 40-point game. So he's my like super large field, get crazy with it kind of a play. Sacramento, I think it's really hard not to play Davion Mitchell if they're going to keep starting him. Now, we won't necessarily know that till later, but you'd assume they would. And we also have the question marks on Halliburton and Metu, which is going to make everybody on Sacramento stick out. So you're trying to get a combination of the Milwaukee-New Orleans game with the Sacramento-Memphis game, in my opinion, is the general way. And then there's going to be some guys in the next game. We're going to talk about how to mix all this together. But I really think that's what you should be trying to do. And I would rate the Sacramento guys, Mitchell, probably Mitchell, Hield, depending on Halliburton's status, I guess. Even if Halliburton plays, I still like Hield. Mitchell, Hield. I don't even know what else to do. Like, I mean, it's everybody makes too much sense, so I don't know how to rank them. Halliburton would be the one if he plays that just an amazing play. These guys are all amazing plays. So Mitchell, Halliburton, Thompson, Hield, Barnes, Metu, Jones. That order, I guess, is what makes the most sense to me. But man, you're going to want, this is a high-paced game too. But without Fox and potentially without Halliburton, geez, it's almost like if we play too many guys early on, we're really going to be missing out here, because there's just no way you're not getting like 6x from at least three of these guys, I don't think. Including Harrison Barnes, who people are going to overlook, but could easily go for 40 plus tonight. All right. With that said, you want to move on over to the Lakers in Minnesota? I'm curious for you to start this one off.
Yeah. I find that with Westbrook out, I think it's difficult not to play one of these guys, Davis or LeBron. Now, fortunately, they made it a little bit, because I'd rather play as LeBron, right? Because he's going to basically be the point guard, right? So,
right.
But they made him $1,000 more than Davis, who has been struggling. And I have them rated very similarly, Davis and LeBron. I just find it, I don't know, I'm going to find it hard to not find a way to play one of these guys. Westbrook is out, and I think you're just supposed to do it. That's the best I can describe this. So, and all this, what we've been talking about we found ways to lineups without Jokic in it, right? Like there's ways to do it. And if you play those lineups with the centers, like you play like Whiteside, you play like, guys in the center position other than Jokic, then you got to get those points somehow. And there are universes, right, where Davis and LeBron outscore Jokic. That certainly can happen. Especially against Minnesota, who, has been known to give up some fantasy points. And so I do like both those guys. Guy that's interesting, there's a guy that's going to be playing for the Lakers, but it might get minutes, who's not on the score sheet, who's not in the DraftKings board. They picked up what's his name? Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
He's not in the DraftKings lineups.
Yep.
Which is interesting. It kind of lessens Rajon Rondo a little bit, if you want to take a dart throw on him. But the guy that you really want to play is your hero, right? Is the Austin Reeves? No, he's I'll keep going. I'll go back to him. He was like your legit hero. He hit the freaking game winner the other day, right?
Off of a nice play by
Westbrook,
by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I like that. So I like all three of those guys, and I think we've gone over like way too many good centers for me to try to play Cat. That's just the way I'm feeling about that. So I don't think I'm gonna get there. D'Angelo Russell could be interesting. I don't think anybody's gonna play him. So I guess that could be an interesting thing. Like if you want to pivot at the same price range off of maybe a chalky Drew Holiday, maybe D'Angelo Russell, LeBron like pairing could be a little could get you somewhere. And that's where I am in this game. What do you think of the Lakers? What do you think of what's going on here?
So I think it's really hard to not prioritize one of the spend ups for the Lakers. I know Anthony Davis has been terrible, but so it depends. A lot of it will depend on their starting lineup. I'm still going to probably play Anthony Davis tonight. But if they start him at the 5, then he would be, if I knew they were starting him at the 5 and not playing DeAndre Jordan, I would be all over this play like crazy. I just think, and also you've got the Davis versus Cat. They were back to back. They didn't play at Kentucky together, but back to back years, right? Or no, it was 2 years later, but it was sort of like the next coming of the Anthony Davis thing, you know.
Right.
There's like a whole thing with these Kentucky guys, so I always look out for that stuff. But also Cat, like I always mention, he's going to leak points. On another slate, I would absolutely be talking about playing DeAndre Jordan here because I don't think they want Davis to match up with Cat the whole game. It doesn't make they don't. He doesn't generally like to do that. He likes to match up with other good players, but not the other team's opposing really good active center. And especially these days where he looks like he's eaten too much. Anyway, Davis and LeBron are both really strong plays. No two ways about it. I think Davis would be a slight preference, maybe just because of the price right now. But this is a national televised game. LeBron, they're sort of still playing their must-win mode. The Lakers have won 6 out of 8 now. They've been playing well without Westbrook. They've been playing well with Westbrook, finally getting it together a little bit. So I think that, you know, in order, Davis, LeBron, 1 and 1A, and then for the Lakers, one of Reeves, Ellington, or Rondo, I expect to potentially get there. I don't know if Rondo they'll give the minutes to. It's my guess, and I know Malik Monk is supposed to have cleared and be ready to go, but just keep an eye out for that one. I don't feel confident 100% in that stuff these days because you get another test later in the day. Rondo hasn't just played in forever. Otherwise, I would say, hey, let's take a shot with Rondo here. And you know what? In the large field, in one of my 25 or 20 large field entries, yeah, maybe I will throw a little Rondo in there. On the Minnesota side, there's a lot of guys with arguments, but I don't think this is the right slate to argue for them. D'Angelo Russell's makes a lot of sense, but I do think that, you know, along the same lines, I don't think Cat is so much worse of a play than Jokic, factoring in the $2,600 price difference, that I think Cat is in play, and factor in that he'll be unowned. I can definitely get involved in that. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that he's gonna be able to, he can put up 60. Why wouldn't we play him? Like, so, and then Edwards and Russell are all interesting to me. It's just, I don't know if it's the right slate for any of them because I can't spend up on everybody. I can't play LeBron, AD, and Towns. I can do that, but is that really the most optimal way with all what we've got from Sacramento and Sacramento and Milwaukee? I don't know if it is. So I think it's viable to do all that. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all of it. But I do want to play it. I do want at least, like, my initial thoughts are I want at least two Bucks. I want at least two Kings. I want at least 1 or 2 Lakers. And then we have to figure the rest out. You know what I mean? And maybe it'll be more of those guys, but that's just my initial thoughts on take on the slate. All right. Boy, Gordon Hayward plays maybe the most efficient game in history. And all they get to reward him by dropping his price again. He was at 8,000, then he was at 74. No, he's at 75, then he was at 74. Now he's at 68. And he just put a 53 the other day. Now he's been incredibly efficient in those games, but he's an efficient player. Another slate, I would be saying, hey, look, this is, I believe it's the highest total on the night. Yeah. And no one wants to play anybody from Charlotte in a great matchup against Portland because LaMelo's coming back, supposedly. I wouldn't mind taking a shot on Gordon Hayward. And honestly, we don't know for sure that LaMelo's back yet. So let's make sure, you know, if LaMelo isn't back, I do think we might have to force in some of these guys. Maybe not as pivots off of like Middleton, but in addition to Middleton, same price range. That's why I mentioned it. I don't think we need to do anything on the Portland side, but what I would say is that Damian Lillard is going to get going at some point in a monster way. I think this is as good a spot as he could possibly have asked for. So I would put Lillard beneath Anthony Davis, but it makes me nervous to even say those words out loud with what I've seen from Davis this season. Now you can say the same thing about Lillard to some extent, but Lillard's not going to shoot 28% or 30% from 3 for the whole season. It's just not possible. So I am interested in Lillard in this matchup. I don't know if I like him better than the other guys. I don't think I would say I do, but it does feel weird that I'm going to be very into Davis and I wouldn't have some Lillard in there. So especially because I don't know. I just think Lillard this could be that ceiling Lillard type of game. So that's what I've got here. What do you got?
Can you pause this for just a second?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. I think I figured out. Not I say figured it out, but you know, you could play Jokic at 12K, like I said. You could play these really good cheap options like Cousins or Whiteside. But dude, if you don't want to do that, I have no problem playing Nurkic here at 7,300
Wow.
for openers. And the other thing is that I really like your Lillard the Lillard idea. And I don't like anything from Charlotte for all the reasons you said. I mean, that not for all the reasons you said, for all the reasons that people are going to say that. LaMelo's back, and presuming he's back, he won't play 37 minutes. Back from COVID, I don't imagine, or whatever. But I think that the Charlotte's the usual balance, and so I would just count on the Charlotte people to do their thing and just as a team keep the game competitive. And I think Portland, between Lillard and Nurkic, can keep the game competitive. But I don't even know who's favored in this, honestly.
Portland by 3.
Who's favored?
Portland by 3.
Portland's favorite. Yeah, I mean,
that makes me lean a little bit that
this.
LaMelo might be out. Like, I know he's supposed to play, but doesn't that make you seem a little weird? I don't know. It seems a little weird to me. Go ahead.
Yeah. So it's a tough slate, man. Because I could certainly do this, but like if you take too many people out of the center position, like there's some really good plays we talked about. Like if Cousins is starting, it's a tough play to avoid. Jokic overall playing, it's a tough play. Even Joe at 8,200, against Cousins, that's got 60-point upside, right?
Yep.
Nothing in this, as you talk about, there's certainly nothing wrong with playing Rudy Gobert at 8,300. There's a lot of, as usual, right? A lot of good center plays. But I really think that Nurkic is right up there alongside of them. And I think I'm gonna end up. I don't know if I'm gonna end up with him in the 888 that I play, but don't bet against it. We'll see.
I love your thinking. I don't think anyone's gonna. I think even early projections might show some ownership on Nurkic. I don't think anybody's playing Nurkic. It is like the premier matchup in all of basketball to play your big against these Charlotte guys. The only thing I would say is that Portland has consistently this year, and it was more so when they had all their guys healthy because they had to play all their guards and all that stuff. But because there's no and like I just think that there's too good of a chance that the game ends up going small and we get back to the 29 minute Nurkic. And Nurkic's projection is only at 30 minutes. And I would want a guy playing 30 plus minutes if I was going to play him on this particular slate at center. Because I do think center is loaded. I think my natural thoughts are you're using a point guard or a center for your utility spot for the most part.
Yeah.
I do think Nurkic on FanDuel at 65, it makes it just a little bit even easier. You know what I mean? I know the pricing is soft over there, but I do think there is a chance that he could, if he puts up 40 at 73, it doesn't really do all that much for me on DraftKings. If he puts up 40 at 65 on FanDuel, then we're in business if we get our other spend ups right, So I like the call. I think it's a great matchup. I just think it's going to be both these teams like to go small, and it feels like they'll use it as an excuse. And on another slate, I would be talking about Mason Plumlee revenge. I will not be doing it on this slate, but I think that Mason Plumlee has some ceiling.
Mason Plumlee played for who?
For Portland.
Oh, I never knew that. Okay.
He was a part of the trade, the trade they made to get Nurkic, right? No, he traded he and somebody to Denver for Nurkic.
Okay.
But but you forget the revenge thing. Just the fact that they're going to need to play a little bit bigger, unless it goes small. It's going to be hard for PJ Washington to cover Nurkic, and you'd think Plumlee, who's at least done it before, would have some chance of there. Yeah. But great slate, a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of stuff we probably haven't heard about. But I want to highlight a few things that I have here. I do think one of Allen or Pat Connaughton is going to have a good game. Now I think that they seem thinner because there's so much other value stuff out there. But I'm just going to say, like, you take away Bobby Portis in addition, you do get Middleton back. But I think that does open things up even more for them. And again, Allen is not going to shoot 1 for a million again. It's just not going to keep happening. I think Jordan Nwora is the good sneaky play from that game that no one's going to play. Probably deserves more as a long shot thing with all the other value we have. Both Mitchells, Davion especially, but Donovan Mitchell as well. Boogie or one of the Boogie or Nwora or Mama, one of those guys is probably going to end up in my lineup. I just don't know who's starting. LeBron, AD, these are priorities. Ingram, Graham, or Joe Val, one of those three if I'm in my Milwaukee stacks. One of Triple J, Brooks, or Bain, maybe two. Thompson, Jones, or Metu, all his options. I think I'd lean Metu right now if he's in, but we don't know if he's in until later. So you might have to do that swap, and then you're sort of losing a center spot because the other guys are only center eligible. Halliburton, Hield, Fox, or Barnes, you could play one or two of those guys. those are sort of the baseline of what I'm doing today, with guys like Reeves mixed in there as a value. But be a little bit careful, as you mentioned, with Isaiah Thomas. LeBron and Haiti have played together before, and if he's running well for them offensively, even as bad as he is defensively, and by the way, no matter what we say about who might be the worst defender in the NBA, no, with Isaiah Thomas back in our lives, he is the worst defender in the NBA. There's no question about it. It's not his fault. I mean, he's too small, but like he is without a doubt the worst, but he is an offensive dynamo, and could take away from these other Lakers. So anyway, those are my sort of thoughts here. Sheets, anything else before we get out of here?
We have to, again, I don't know if I'm going to be around for live against Friday. Okay. It's kind of rough. I'll let you know.
Yep.
But it's going to be, I think it's definitely going to be important to see if Cousins is starting.
Yep. We won't know that obviously by then, but yeah.
It's possible.
Hope so, but we haven't gotten
some coach speak. You might get something.
Yeah, we could. That's true. We could.
But I'll tell you something else. I'll tell you something else. I really don't think I'm going to have any of this Miami or. I really think I'm not going to have much of the first couple of games. I mean, I think it's going to be starting with the Milwaukee game anyway. I don't know. Unless you want to play Jokic. Jokic, right? Exactly.
Well, yeah. If we hear beforehand that Cole Anthony Harris or Bamba are out or anything. Like Okiki is going to be, I mean, it's just, if he's going to play like 40 minutes, like I'm going to want some part of that at 3,600. But other than that, I agree with you. There's probably better value later. But is he better value than Austin Reeves? Then probably, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think that Reeves is like a must play. You know, it's
no, but I'm just comparing him to other guys the same price range who are going to be popular. Right. Of course, Reeves is not a must play, but he did close for them. He did play the overtime coming off of a game winner. But he's not going to make he's not going to shoot 83% from three and get 7 rebounds every game.
No.
He had 9% usage for what it's worth. And Wayne Ellington might be just as good a play as he is. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks so much, Sheets. And we were going to be back with an NFL video for Saturday.
Yep.
And good luck to everybody tonight. I'll see you guys at 6 Eastern. We hope Sheets can join us. Good luck.